quickly, just to say thank you very much for sparing the time this afternoon to join us on the CPD Think Inclusively. We hope it will be the first of many CPDs that we can offer schools specifically around inclusion. And today's CPD will be more of a general topic around inclusion, and some of the follow-ups will be more specific with regards to particular conditions or disabilities that we might be able to support with. But as I say, the session is being recorded as well. So what we'll do is after the session, we'll share it with you, so you can access any of the kind of ideas and points that we cover at your own leisure as well. So just quickly, because I think some of you may know some of our members of staff already, but some might be some new faces. So just quick introductions from us. My name's Carly, and I'm the Children's Disability Lead for SASP.
And I'm Jason. I'm the school games organiser for the Mendip area.
Great, and I'm Tony. I'm the Primary PE Development Manager. Brilliant. So welcome. We will have aims for our course, and when we got together to put, to write this and put it together for you, there were some really important things that we wanted to get across. So we're hoping today that you'll gain further knowledge and understanding of the term inclusion, and we can have a discussion around what that means. We're hoping to challenge our thinking a little bit about what inclusion means, and think about whether our curriculum is inclusive enough, and the intent of our curriculum is inclusive enough. We're going to look at some practical ideas of practice around inclusion, and hopefully give you some takeaways so that you have some ideas to share with, simple ideas to share with staff. We're hoping that we can signpost you to some great inclusion resources that might help you at school and the rest of the staff.
So we've got a nice start for you with a video. Well, when you're watching this video, we want you just to think about what inclusion and being inclusive means to you. And what do you think are the key messages, or what really hits home to you when you watch it? So perhaps if you want to use the chat facility, because the video is 9 minutes long, so you've got time to gather some thoughts and put them in the chat for us. That'd be great.
A bit of homework, Jason, for them to start with, or a bit of a like setting work for your classes online, isn't it already? Carly, I'll let you know if we can hear it. So just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, guys. Yeah, I've got some nodding heads, so that's brilliant.
thanks, Carly. Well, I've seen that a number of times, and it always pulls on the heartstrings, doesn't it? There were no questions, and nothing came through the chatter. But just thinking back to the question that was posed at the beginning, what do you think are the key messages, and what really hits home with you? I wonder if we've got someone brave enough to start us off with some of their thoughts.
Yeah. There's not too many of us, and what I should have said before we started our training was there's no right or wrong answers. So this is a safe place to share ideas. We're not here to tell you things we think you don't know. We're here to encourage some and generate some discussion. So is anyone brave enough to say what they thought was what stuck out for them, or what was most poignant or important?
I wrote down that the image of breaking into millions of pieces and then reconfiguring is about breaking down the barriers, and but also looking at the amount of effort that might be required to do those simple everyday tasks that most of us take for granted.
Yeah, I think that's great, Wynne, that I think the effort comes through, that just to get to feel included or to get to be with your peers takes a great deal of effort. Great to kind of think about the barriers too, and the fact that I think the fence coming down at the end is a great symbol of the removal of barriers and how that can feel. So yeah, brilliant. Anybody else got anything? It feels like quite a long video, but actually it draws you in because it is done from the perspective of the young person, and you can feel that pain and that shame and that frustration. I think it's really good at that.
Yeah, I had breaking down barriers as well, Tony, but I also picked up that I thought it shows that children can be cruel sometimes, but they can also be kind, can't they? So it's working with that. Kids can be really good as well to have on your side and support if they do want to. On the whole, they do want to include others.
Yeah, and we can. And today we're going to have a chat, Jason, aren't we, about modelling that behaviour and modelling those values, about thinking inclusively for young people and the children we work with. Carly, would you mind? Sorry, just putting that slide back. Can you go back a slide for me? Is that okay? Because I think I'm going to set, just if you can, set this group a little task following on from that video that Jason's asked you. So guys, can you use the chat function if you feel brave enough, and just write down, think about the word inclusive, and just pop down 3 words or phrases that spring to mind when you think about what inclusive means. So if I was to say to you, you have to explain to the children what inclusive means, what other words would you use, do you think, if you wanted to explain inclusion to either another adult or young people? Can you pop those in the chat and just see? So any words. So for me, I'd probably use the word accessible, and you can steal that one if you like, but I would probably use the word accessible. So if you've got any that you think you would use when explaining what inclusion is, can you pop them in the chat for me? I know Sarah can use the chat because she's already done it. So and Carly and Jason, feel free to join in. Brilliant. So Wynne, that's great. So everyone can join in is a really big deal. Really, yeah. Love those. So just the word everyone, Wynne, is a brilliant word for inclusion. And Gemma, thanks. You've put opportunity is really important, because sometimes those barriers create a lack of opportunity. A sense of belonging is vital. Yeah, Wynne, equal opportunities. Tom, yeah, we love that belonging. And I know at Brookside they have some specialist provision alongside their mainstream provision, and I know that is integrated a lot of some of the time. So I think that sense of belonging to that community, I fit with those people and I fit with that activity and I belong there, is really important. No one's stolen accessibility, so that would probably be mine to put there. Carly, any other words that spring to mind for you?
I don't know about one word, but I think what strikes me in that video is when we think about inclusion, we think about physically including a child in a session from maybe a practical point of view, as where can they, what exercises can they access and activities. But I think what really came from that video is the power of sport and activity covers that kind of mental and social inclusion as well. And I think that's where it tugs on the heartstrings. You can, you can see that he feels left out and excluded, not maybe just from a physical point of view, but from an emotional point of view as well.
From
and
friendships, from social interactions, absolutely. So inclusivity about everybody, and that belonging, not just to an activity, but to a set of people, to my peers, to my school. I belong to this as well. Brilliant, Carly. So yeah, so Carly, if you're happy to move on to the next, acceptance win is a brilliant word. You're right, because it isn't, that's the same belonging and acceptance is, you can join in with an activity. You can even participate at your own level and still feel like you don't belong or have been accepted by your peers, and so that's a really important thing. So on this slide that we've got, you've used the chat function to tell us what you think when you hear the word inclusion, and we've got some really nice quotes for you. I love the one on the bottom right hand side, which is exactly what you've been saying about acceptance and belonging, which is that diversity and inclusion isn't just being invited to the party. True inclusion is being asked to dance, true belonging, true acceptance for who you are. And I love that. So not just, if we're thinking about physical education and physical activity, not just being out there and kind of joining in, but actually being an integral part of that session, feeling like you're with your friends, feeling like it's your place to be. And we know that inclusion involves race, gender, disability, medical, or any other need, social and emotional need, if we think about the current situation we're in. And you absolutely right about equal access. You spoke about the word opportunities, and then the removal of barriers, which I think that video showed brilliantly about how we can break those barriers down, social barriers, emotional barriers, and physical barriers. And thinking about systems and structures, we're going to have a think about your curriculums. Do our systems and structures support inclusivity? So it isn't just about what happens in that lesson, but all the planning that goes into it and the way we write our curriculum and our school values. Do the systems and structures of our school support that thinking inclusive mentality? So with that in mind, we're going to have a think about, oh no, not yet. Sorry, Jace, I've skipped. I was ready for it then. Carry on talking, Jace. I won't make them be practical yet.
So, okay, we have some facts and figures here of what we actually know. So nationally, there's a percentage there, 14.9% all pupils have special educational needs. Within our own area, and today we know we've got representation from the four districts. So we've got representation from Tone, from Sedgemoor, from South Somerset, and from Mendip involved with this CPD today. But so from those 9 schools, you can see there that all those 9 schools have a total of nearly 2,500 pupils. 17% of those are identified as SEN. They're on some register, so that's slightly higher than the national average. But I think the point is it's a significant number of our school population, so we need to be thinking about what we're doing for those children. So we've got some questions, and this will take a bit of talking around, and we can probably all help each other with this. So if I just go through what the questions are: how confident are you about delivering inclusive PE lessons or clubs? And then if we talk about your curriculum design, is it fit for purpose? Does it have every learner's needs at the heart of it, and equal sort of opportunities? So again, yeah, go on, Tony. You're muted though.
I should get myself one of the t-shirts. You're on mute. You're still muted. If we've got, for that first question, how confident do you personally feel as either teacher, coach, Senko? How confident do you feel about delivering inclusive PE lessons? If 1 is not very confident and 5 is confident, can you just give us a show of kind of numbers about how confident you feel about making your own personal PE lessons inclusive? So How confident do you feel right now today? So 1 is not very confident, 5 is confident. Give me a show of hands quickly. And Tom, if you stick that in the chat, that would help us. Thank you, Sarah, for being really honest. A 3, 2 from Win, 2. Great. So, and Tom's put a 4. Brilliant, Tom. So yeah, so we've got a varying degree. No one really underconfident, but no one super confident. And even after delivering, you know, for Carly, Jason and I, who deliver all the time, I wouldn't say I feel that I deliver wholly inclusive sessions all of the time. I think about it. I want to do the right thing, but I probably don't do it all of the time. So if you guys feel like that, then we need to consider, how do the staff at your school feel? If you are a PE lead and you're feeling that, I feel like I get it right some of the time, imagine how the rest of the staff feel. So that's why we're going to try and give you some things to take away today, to maybe share with them some ideas about how to think more inclusively. If we think on that wider picture about a school curriculum design, how inclusive is that curriculum design, your PE curriculum design specifically? Is it fit for purpose? Is it inclusive enough? Does it have all the learners at the heart of it? Is it a sport first curriculum that chooses the activity? So for instance, when I was at school, it was always we do 6 weeks of hockey, 6 weeks of rugby, that kind of thing, which is great. But it was always because the teacher loved bench ball, or the teacher loved cricket. The year 6 teacher loved cricket, so he always taught cricket in the summer term, rather than what was right for the children, and not just an individual child that had maybe some additional needs, but for all the children. So a wholly inclusive curriculum thinks about what the children need, what stage they're at, what age they are, and physically what they need. So does your curriculum put children at the heart of it? When you're doing your planning, do you think, oh, I've got 2 bags of size 5 footballs. Oh yeah, and everyone loves football, we'll definitely do football. Or I've got this space, so we'll definitely do tennis because we've got some brilliant tennis resources. Or do you think, what do my learners need first? It's a challenging question. It's a really difficult question. And it isn't always something that we can achieve instantly or even across the whole of our curriculum. But if we can flip our thinking a little bit about what our children need first, rather than what space we've got, what equipment we've got, or what we like to teach, then we're starting to think more inclusively. And you said it yourself about the word opportunity. If we really reflected on it, does every child in school have the same opportunity? Or do some children, because of the curriculum design, have more opportunity because of skills that they already have from community clubs outside of school, because of their age, because of their friendship groups? Do they have better opportunities or more opportunities than others? So do we give every child the same opportunity? And there's some questions that we might not have the answers to, you guys might not have the answers to, but I think we wanted to challenge you today to think more inclusively. So so those were our challenging questions. Those were our questions to take away from today, to reflect on and think, if I think about my curriculum design, is it fit for purpose if I'm thinking inclusively? So I'm not going to ask you to say, no, mine isn't, oh my God, it's dreadful, or bits of mine are. That's not for us to criticize, or that's just that little bit of gentle prodding to remind you that we're here to think inclusively. So does our PE program match our thinking inclusively values? And we're going to share with you now some ways we can think more inclusively, some ways our curriculum design and our individual PE lessons can become more inclusive. Yeah, so Wyn, you're absolutely right. Before we move on, I think this year's a funny year. I mean, it has been. Almost our curriculum design's gone out the window, and we've been doing whatever we possibly can just to get the children physically active. And I suppose this comes at a nice time. We might all be back in for the summer term, and we might have some time to think about our curriculum moving forward from September and the impact of COVID. What other activities have we done with the children? Have we just had fun with them and got them active, and that's been the best we can do? Well, that's brilliant under the circumstances. But come September, when, you know, should we be thinking about what we could do with our curriculum design to make it more inclusive? Or actually, have we got the summer term to practice some of our thinking inclusively ideas because we've got this lovely time now in the summer term with maybe slightly less pressure on our PE curriculum program. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not a criticism of anybody. It's more of a little challenging prod to think, where can we go in the future? So we're going to do a little bit of practical, because we're going to start thinking about how we can make our individual PE sessions more practical, and a principle that we can share with you that you can share with staff at school. So I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to close my chat down on here. I'm going to ask you to, Sarah, if you feel comfortable to turn your video on. Carly, do you want to unshare so we can see everyone? Is that okay? Just for 2 minutes? Amazing. So I can all see you at the top of my screen. Tom, I can't see you, but I've done some practical with you before, and I know that you're going to be doing it, so that's fine. So to start with, guys, you just need an object, a piece of equipment of your choice. I have been relegated to the bedroom in my house because we are all fighting for space, and everybody is on either live sessions or live lessons with my kids. So I'm in the bedroom. I've got a hairbrush. So that's my piece of equipment of choice. But if I was in school, I might have a ball or a quoit or a, yes, Sarah's got a ruler. Woo, she's in. Brilliant. Water bottles are amazing. Oh, Win, she's beaten us all. She's got a teddy. Brilliant. So a piece of equipment of your choice, and it might be that at school you've got a quoit or a hoop or a ball or a scarf or a balloon, anything. Okay, so we've got a lovely piece of equipment, and now we just need a space of our choice. And I'm going to say to you, my space is, I'm stood up because my computer's on a cushion, but you guys can stand up, you could sit down comfortably in your chair, pick a space that you're comfortable with, that you want to work in at the moment. So stay sitting down if you want, or stand up if you're comfortable. You can change at any point once you hear what the task is. So space, be comfortable, sit down or stand up. Equipment, anything of your choice. Jason's going for it. He's even taken his glasses off. He knows what's coming. Equipment of your choice. Task. We are going to set ourselves a little personal best challenge, and we're going to see how many times we can move our piece of equipment around our body. You have some choices within this task, because you can move a bit of equipment around any part of your body. If you're sat down, you could move it around your leg, for instance, if you wanted. You could move it around your head. I'm going to choose, because I'm stood up, to just move it around my body. And I'm going to show you that every time it comes back around my body and moves from one hand to the next, I'm going to count that as 1. When it comes back around again, I'm going to count it as 2. And I'm going to give you 15 seconds, guys, to see if we can set a personal best of how many times we can really focus, we can really concentrate to pass our object around our body. Give me a thumbs up if you are ready while I get ready to start my timer. Okay, Jason's ready. Oh, Sarah, wave your object if you're ready. Win's got the teddy. She's going for it. Okay. I'm going to give you a 3, 2, 1, and we're going to go for it. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Ah, Carly, I like that choice of round your head. Great concentration. Oh, good. Sarah's been distracted, but she's still managing it. Brilliant. Jason's doing a figure of 8. And stop. Brilliant. Keep that number in your head. That is fantastic. Now I'm going to give you the choice to make that task easier or harder. If you want to challenge yourself and really make it more difficult, you might not beat your PB, but it would be great to challenge ourselves. You can do. But if you'd like to make it easier and change your piece of equipment or move around a different part of your body, then you can make it easier as well. So your choice, your learning. What do you think you want to do? Jason, can you give me an example? You did a figure of 8. That was really challenging anyway. If you were going to make that more challenging, what could you do?
That's a good question.
You might. He's blind anyway, everybody, without his glasses, but he might. He might decide to close his eyes. If you're sat down, you might decide to stand up. It might be that you choose a different part of your body. Carly, I noticed you were going around your head, which was fantastic, but you might choose a different part of your body. So easier or harder, it's your choice. You can change your piece of equipment. I love that challenge, Jason. Brilliant. And we're going to go for another 15 seconds and see if we can beat our personal best. Are we ready? Give me a wave of your equipment if you're ready. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Off you go. Oh, I love, look, Wynn's changed her equipment and where she's moving it. I love that challenge. Great control of your own learning, Wynn. I love that. I think Gemma's passing something around her leg. I can't quite see, but it looks brilliant. And Sophia, and stop. Give me a thumbs up if you beat your personal best. Oh, give me a thumbs up if you really challenged yourself. Brilliant. Did something more difficult. Oh, Tom, I knew you'd beat your personal best. I know how competitive you are. Brilliant. I hope you were using a ball or a stack of cones or something like that, Tom. That's fantastic. Guys, that's just a really simple online demonstration of how space, task, equipment, and even people, so what we're doing, how we're feeling, and how we're in control of our own learning, how we can make things easier, harder, or challenge ourselves or change a task in control of our own learning. If we were all together in a room, I probably would have said you can pair up with another person or work in a group if you want to. But space, task, equipment, and people, when we give ownership of those things to our young people, and when we change those things, then we can really start to develop some inclusivity. So I've got a challenge for you now. In the chat, tell me what principles made that little tiny activity inclusive. So what did I do or say to you that made it feel inclusive? Because I'm hoping it did. Please tell me if it didn't, but what made it feel inclusive? So there are some absolutely golden threads and key themes. So tell me, brilliant. So Tom's put challenge, and by that we mean challenge, appropriate challenge at your own level. And Tom's absolutely right. If Tom really wanted to challenge himself and do the whole thing standing on his head with his eyes closed, he could have done. Gemma, you're absolutely right. Choice is key to inclusivity and variety. So having the choices to add variety to that program. Sophia, you're right. The it's up to you. You choose. You're in control of your learning is vital. I let you choose the space you worked in. I let you choose the equipment. I let you choose the challenge level. And actually, even the task, even though we kept it to 15 seconds and we moved an object around our body, we all had choice about how we did that. So the golden thread of it's a personal best challenge of 15 seconds moving something around your body didn't change. That's our activity. But by changing my language, offering choice, using the step principle, everybody can do that at their own level and access it. Brilliant. You guys were fantastic. Thank you for joining in.
Okay, I'm just going to start to share my screen again so
Thanks,
we can
Carly.
go back to the presentation. Wait a second. Okay, everybody see that again now? Yeah, lovely. Sorry guys, I can't see you all the time when I'm sharing. So yeah, if you can just let me know if you can or can't, that'd be fab.
Brill.
But, lovely. So at the start of the presentation, we were very much looking at the what. So what is inclusion and what do we mean by inclusion if we're going to make sure that we're doing that within our sessions. And Tony's just helped us to start to explore the hows. So now we've got an understanding of what we want to achieve. It's how we do that in a practical sense in our lessons. And we thought it'd be really useful just to share these two models with you. They might be models that you're familiar with already, or there might be something that you've not seen before. So we're just going to take a couple minutes just to kind of go through them and explain their usefulness with regards to inclusion in sport and PE. So the first one that we're going to look at is the inclusion spectrum. And actually, we can use these two models together or we can use them separately, but we'll quickly look at the inclusion spectrum first. And what this does is shows us the different formats that we can use within PE and school sport around being inclusive. So first of all, the first format that we can use in a lesson is something called an open session. Now, what we mean by that is an activity or part of an activity whereby the rules of the game mean that everybody can take part. And normally what that means is there's actually very few restrictions on what that game is. So warm-up activities are really good examples of open activities, because the objective may be to knock over as many cones as you can, and that's it. And why that's a really good open activity is because it doesn't necessarily specify how you do that. So for a child that has really good mobility, they may be running around the space and knocking the cones over with their hands. For somebody with restricted mobility, they may decide to work in a smaller area of that court and just concentrate on a few cones. And they may use a piece of equipment to help them reach that cone. So they may have a hockey stick or a tennis racket that they're going around an area and using to knock those cones over. So any games or sessions where the restrictions or rules are quite limited and allows for creativity are really good open games, really good open formats. The next one to talk about is a parallel activity. Now, what a parallel activity is the whole class are joining in with the same sport or activity, but they're grouped based on ability. So for instance, what we might do is we might have a lesson for volleyball, for instance, but within our lesson, we have maybe 3 or more different groups. Now, one group might be playing volleyball in a seated format, and their area may be a little bit smaller than we would traditionally use for volleyball. We may even remove the net altogether, because at this point, for this group, that net's a barrier. And we may decide to choose actually that we don't use a volleyball and we replace that ball with something such as a beach ball or even a balloon or something that's lighter and larger than maybe a traditional volleyball. The next group might be playing a similar format in the sense that they're using a lighter and larger ball, but actually this group are standing. And we may even introduce a net if we want to. Or the net may be replaced with a row of cones, so it indicates an object to send a ball over, but doesn't necessarily have that larger restriction. And the last group might be playing something that looks a little bit more traditionally like a game of volleyball. So they may all be standing, they may be in a space similar to a volleyball court, and they may have a full-size net. So what we have is a lesson whereby every child is playing volleyball and is developing volleyball skills, whether that's looking at sending the object or controlling the object or scoring points, whatever the objective of the session is, but they're all playing that in a format that is suitable for their ability. And what I think is really good to note is actually, as teachers, we can have some say in where those students go as part of those groups. But actually, this is where the choice and variety comes in, because we may put it to our students that actually they can choose where their starting place is. So they may start on the seated version in group 1 before progressing through the groups. Or they may decide to challenge themselves and go into group 3. And that's where they feel that actually by having less ability in some cases, they're not kind of targeted or highlighted within a group for having less coordination or maybe physical ability for that particular activity.
Carly, and when those activities are given equal value and the emphasis is on fun and learning behaviours, so working well together as a team or being with your friends or trying something new or challenging yourself, then that becomes a safe place for children to feel included. Because if I think I'm really brilliant at volleyball, but I make a choice to go to seated volleyball because I want to give it a try and it looks fun, I want to be with my friend, or I want to see if I can try something new, then I need to be praised for that. When we only praise on physical outcomes, when we only praise on how good somebody is at something, and we don't praise other areas, then our think inclusively thread diminishes. So it's really important that when we offer choice, we don't, as Carly said, we don't offer it for the children. We don't say, oh, Gemma, you need to go in this group. but Sophia, you need to go in this group. That children make choices for themselves, and we praise those choices, particularly if they are choices not based on outcome. Their choices based on other learning behaviours, then that is brilliant for inclusivity.
Absolutely. And I think just in the example of seated volleyball or volleyball, sometimes we make the assumption that a seated activity is easier than a standing activity. But actually, for a child that has really good mobility, a seated activity can be a real challenge, because actually they have to learn how to move around the court differently. And whereas somebody else may find a seated activity easier because of their needs. So sometimes you can mix those groups up of what you would traditionally do in a PE session based on actually adding some different variations. So that's a really good thing to think about as well. The third kind of structure and element to look at is something called modified activities. And this is where the STEP model can come in and be a really useful tool in how we make those modifications. And Tony's given us some practical examples as how she's done that based on changing the space, the task, the equipment, or the people. So, for instance, if we were going to look at a football session, and we've decided that football is the activity we want to do, but we have a young person in our group that uses either a walking frame or a wheelchair, for instance. What we're going to use is we're going to use the STEP model to see how we can engage them with that activity. And it might mean that the traditional activity looks a little bit different, but actually the outcomes are very much the same. And that could be around receiving and sending an object, or scoring a goal, or controlling an object. But the traditional version may look just a little bit different. So for instance, for that person using a wheelchair, if we look at space, if they were to control an object through some cones, we may decide that actually those cones need to be spread further apart in order for that chair to move through in an accessible way. The task may be to control a ball through those cones, and traditionally in football we would use our feet. But actually, there's no reason why we can't change that task for that young person. And the challenge for them could be to dribble or bounce, to hold and control, but still navigating through those cones. The equipment could look different as well. So rather than using a traditional football, we may be fortunate enough to have a power chair football at school. But if we don't, that football could be changed for a tennis ball, or a basketball, or a balloon, a volleyball, depending on how we want them to control that object and the challenge that we want to give them. And lastly, we can change the people as well. So actually, what we can do is we can, some tasks are done individually, but actually this can be part of a group challenge or a pair challenge, whereby they have an opportunity to move up and down through the cones, and a personal challenge on time or how many times they can go through without knocking the cone. So we've really changed what a traditional football skill may look like, but the outcomes are very much the same and are very much achievable and appropriate for that learner.
Carly, yeah, I was just going to say that you're absolutely right that we need to move away from that traditional Olympic thought that your year 5s and 6s might say to you, well, that's not football. But the thread, the learning objective is to send and receive, or to dribble, or to score. How we do that, just because some children do that with their feet in football, it doesn't mean every child has to. And we have to model those behaviours, as we talked about from the video. We have to model those inclusive behaviours for our children, so that they know that your objective of your lesson isn't football, but it is sending and receiving using our feet, or it is scoring a goal. And so we need to move away from the national or Olympic rules of football and this is the only way that we can do it, and we need to modify it so that it becomes a more inclusive activity. I mean, you do that on a regular basis so that children don't get caught up with what they think they know the rules are.
And the last one on the spectrum, the inclusion spectrum, is separate or alternative activities. And I think it's important to say that there is absolutely a time and a place where a separate or alternative activity would be appropriate. And that really kind of comes down to if that separate activity is of benefit to that young person. So it may be that there's a session where they have physical therapy, for instance, or physio, or there's a session whereby they're concentrating on their dexterity and their fine motor skills or their larger motor skills, and that's really appropriate. But I think it's, in the case of being inclusive, I think what our message is that actually the main thing that we want to do is to provide a PE lesson whereby every child can benefit and join in with that activity. And while separate activities do have their place, we don't want it to be a regular thing. And actually, it can be very much based on the thoughts and needs of that individual as well. So of times where actually that child is happy and feels that they would like to do something slightly separate, and that kind of guidance comes from them, then I think absolutely great. But I think what we want to try and avoid is obviously having a young person that feels that they need to do something separate because the session isn't appropriate to them in that current format. So our role is to change the format and then give that person the choice that actually now it's kind of appropriate and inclusive, that we can all join in. And that was just a really quick whistle-stop tour on those two models. But you may be able to see just on the left-hand side of the pictures, there's a link there. And what I'm going to do is after we've finished the session, I'll follow up with the recording, but also some useful links. And that link there just kind of goes through to a video that talks about the inclusion spectrum and the STEP model in just a little bit more detail, and gives a few more practical examples of how they can be used. So hopefully that will just help to kind of back up the learning from our very quick discussion on those models. Cheers,
Thanks, Connie. Thanks, Connie. We've got a couple of short 2-minute video clips to watch here now to give you some more practical ideas. These clips have actually come from the School Games website, which you may already have access to, or if you haven't, you can get access to. They are, when you watch them, you'll see that they are competition based. So we need to think about putting that into the curriculum lesson setting. So we'll watch them and then we'll have a quick chat afterwards. Carly, do you want to play the cricket one?
And just give me a shout that you can see it as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's good at the minute.
If you work in a team, you should be using Monday.com. It's a platform to manage any team and any workflow.
Give us a quick thumbs up, guys, so you can see that and hear that. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sam Wiles, and today I'm going to be introducing Inclusive Quick Cricket. Cricket itself is a game that really anybody can take part in, no matter what your disability is. I think it's important that sport's inclusive for everybody and that everybody can be seen to be playing against each other, no matter of your ability.
Inclusive Quick Cricket enables pupils of all abilities to take part in every aspect of the game through some simple adaptations, and it's part of the Sainsbury's School Games. Teams are made up of 8 players, and the game is played on a wicket of up to 10 metres. The batting team can score runs by hitting the ball and then running between the wickets, as well as from a wide ball or no ball. They can lose runs by being bowled, caught, or run out by the fielding team. After each over, the fielding team rotates positions so that everyone gets a chance to play different roles from wicketkeeper to bowler. The game can be adjusted to include a wide range of players. If appropriate, fielders can be allowed to catch the ball after 1 or 2 bounces. The wicket and the outfield can also be adjusted to make it easier for players to field. The game can also be adjusted by allowing players to perform an alternative task to running. For example, passing the bat around the body or spinning around in the wheelchair to count as a run. Players can be provided with hand grips or strapping to help hold and control the bat, or they can even use a tennis racket instead of a cricket bat. Different balls such as a tennis ball, small football, or softer balls in high visibility colours can be used. Players can also hit a ball off a tee.
Once you set it up, they get on with the game. You've just got to keep it flowing a bit, that's all.
Tom hit the ball and it went all the way up to the lights. I really enjoyed it because it's nice playing cricket with other people. I think I've improved from last time.
It's a cracking game where you can adapt it for all shapes and sizes, all disabilities, and use it very much as inclusion and process.
I think today's been a really good day and I hope we can do another day like it.
More information about playing the game can be found on the competition card that accompanies this video.
Great, thanks, Carly. So, just thinking about the STEP principle. Home videos again, Carly. Yeah. Just thinking about the STEP principle on that. It was competition based, and we've looked at that previously, and we saw a lot of kids sat out at the back. So obviously, when you're thinking about a lesson, we wouldn't want that. So if you're thinking about the STEP principle and the space, you may have enough space to have 2 or even 3 games going on at once. So that obviously includes more people. Within that, within that short video, the task as well, they looked at maybe using 2 or even 3 sets of stumps side by side. They looked at spinning to run. They looked at a one bounce catch. So they changed the task. They were able to change the task with those various scenarios. With the equipment, they had a choice of they suggested a choice of balls or a choice of bats. And then with the people, really nice here that everyone played in every position. So they didn't say that one person was the bowler and they just bowled all lesson. They gave everybody a chance to move through all of those positions.
Jason, it's absolutely brilliant that you've identified those. And the underlying word, I suppose, for the space, task, equipment, or people is choice. And some of our children might not be used to that. You know, this is how we play cricket. Why have they got 3 sets of stumps and I've only got 1? Why do they get to choose what bat they want to use? But as long as you get to choose as well, so as long as every child gets choice and not just the child maybe you've targeted that you want to include. Remember, we're talking about think inclusively for all children. So if Jason is really accomplished cricketer, but he wants to choose on that particular day to have 3 sets of stumps, then that's up to Jason. Actually, accepting and acknowledging your own challenge level and what you want to do is important. And that is a really hard change to make to some of your lessons. And resource-wise, your teachers might find some of it challenging. But once we get into that process where we can offer children choice and we've got a few more bits of equipment, it can become a cultural change. It can become a day-to-day thing that when I go into bat in rounders or in cricket, if either of those games, I get a choice of what bat I use. I get a choice of what ball comes towards me. I get a choice of how I score a run according to my challenge level. And it's just about that whole thing, thinking inclusively for every child. So yeah, brilliant, Jace. Great examples there of how to use the STEP principle.
Yeah, we've got an interesting one now. So we've got an alternative of canoeing, which probably we haven't even thought about before, but it does make us gives us ideas and makes us think about different challenges, different uses for different pieces of equipment. So should we go with the canoeing clip, Carly?
Just a thumbs up as well. That's cool.
Today I am going to introduce you to inclusive indoor canoeing. Inclusive indoor canoeing is a sports hall-based canoeing competition and is part of the Sainsbury's School Games. Teams of 4, made up of SEND and non-SEND athletes, navigate around a course demonstrating a range of canoeing strokes and skills. Teams of similar ability can be created by timing athletes through the course as part of a warm-up activity and grouping athletes into teams with similar times. Inclusive indoor canoeing is unique in that it allows athletes to learn the skills of canoeing without having to get wet. The competition is set out across 2 badminton courts using cones, chairs, shuttles and paddles. Athletes navigate through the 4 different zones, performing the required movements and paddling actions as fast as possible, trying not to incur penalties. The competition can be adapted to include a wide range of players. You can allow athletes to move without a paddle, change the number and complexity of the gates, and adjust the number of athletes in each team.
The challenges for young people with special educational needs and disability competing in sport can be a range of things, from access to facilities to being able to take part in competition alongside their peers.
Today has been very enjoyable and a really good laugh. This has been different from sports I've tried before, but it's been so much fun.
This SEND format will allow people to access meaningful competition because the facilities are relatively easy to access. There's no need for lots of different types of equipment. It allows young people of multiple different disabilities to work together. So it can really drive them towards thinking, well, actually, I might want to take up this activity out on the water or in the swimming pool.
More information about how to run the competition can be found on the card that accompanies this video.
Yeah, thanks, Carly. Yeah, as you can see, competition based, but can we think a little bit beyond that and a new alternative, exciting opportunity for people with it was something that's slightly different. So various paddling motions, various gates to navigate through and touch, slalom type events. So maybe we could set those up as stations within lesson time before we went into sort of a bit more of a competition. Yeah, just some things to try and broaden our thinking, really.
Yeah, Jace, I think it's a brilliant example of how we can take a parallel activity or think about those children and bring our more mainstream or our more physically capable children in. I think it's brilliant. It's such a creative way to think about a sport that's normally on the water and think about it being indoors. And if you think they can do that with canoeing, you guys, as brilliant creative teachers that you are, could do that with anything, couldn't you? You could really be creative. And actually the best people to come up with the creative ideas are often the children. When you say, let's set up a course for, let's do golf, but let's not do golf with golf clubs. Let's do it with frisbees. Let's do it with beanbags. Let's do it with, why don't we design a course and set it up and you can use whatever equipment you want. And as Wynne said earlier, this has been a funny year for PE. So this would be a wonderful summer term to be able to try out some alternative activities and be creative yourselves as teachers and with the children and come up with some formats that might really work inclusively.
Yeah, there's a number of these on the School Games website, and they've got video clips like this, and they've also got lesson plan cards that you can print off. So I can help you. I can help you with finding those resources if need be. Okay, great, Carly.
So the next thing that we're going to look at was a scenario in which we could discuss as a group and discuss how, based on the kind of examples that we've been given through the presentation, the practical examples, how we could cater for those individual kind of circumstances and individual needs. But I wonder whether, rather than discussing one of the ones that we've suggested up on the screen, whether after having discussed being inclusive and giving examples, if there's any particular children or scenarios that spring to your mind specifically, because I think as we're a smaller group, it may give us an opportunity to talk about specific needs from your schools, rather than one that we've maybe created as a theoretical example. So I don't know, just putting it to the floor initially, whether there's any kind of examples, like say either for a particular child or a particular lesson, that we could maybe help to discuss and give some practical guidance around that.
Yeah, anyone got any learners that they're particularly thinking about? I know that if Trish was here, and I know she wasn't able to join us today, but she had a particular learner in mind, didn't she, Kylie? A visually impaired learner that she approached us about. Have you guys got anybody specific within school that you worry about, that you think about, that you have come on this training particularly thinking about, rather than general inclusion? Anybody feel happy to unmute and share? Go on, Sophia, I can see you want to, leaning in. Yeah.
For me personally, it'd be more about scenario 2, different for a variety of children within the school, and obviously there's obviously the variety of different, but like the loud noises, certain bits like that, and generally with autism there's other things linked in, like learning difficulties and other things. So it would be that one that I'm particularly thinking about at the moment for various different children.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think what we're going to share towards the end of the presentation as well is some useful resources, and there's some training called All About Autism, All About Me. I don't know if you've heard of that, Sophia.
I think so. I might have. Is it like video based and slides?
So it's an online training, so it's got 3 different modules that you can kind of click through, and it's what's really useful about that training, as I've done it myself, is as well as maybe exploring the autistic spectrum and things to consider, it also gives you some really practical resources to use with young people as well. So as you mentioned, quite often with children on the autistic spectrum, it comes with other conditions. And that might be sensory considerations, for example, and you've mentioned about loud noises and things like that. And it also kind of discuss around not just maybe the practical barriers, but also like the social and communication barriers that quite often children with autism can face. So it's a number of different things to kind of consider, I think, when looking at inclusion. And what I'll do as part of the training and the resources is I'll send that link through, because I think it will be a really useful link to kind of explore that in a bit more detail, but also say you've got some nuggets to kind of take away with you, and they include some of the forms that you can, and those discussions that you can have with that young person, a little bit like we've discussed in this session about kind of going back to that young person and asking how we can make things more appropriate and easier for them. And it has some kind of resources that you can use to kind of guide those conversations as well. I don't know if that sounds useful.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Sophia, I did some teacher support in a school with a young person, quite a few, as you're saying, young children who were on the autistic spectrum disorder. One particular boy who hadn't really accessed PE in a number of years, and they changed their PE program to think more inclusively. They used a particular resource that was all about, I suppose, challenge levels and children taking charge of their own learning, lots of choice, lots of variety. And within that change of program, that young person, because they had choice to access it the way they wanted, whether that was equipment or just how they belonged within the lesson, it changed everything. And for the first time in probably 2.5 years, that young person started to join in. Now, that didn't necessarily mean they had all their strategies for the management of the classroom. So the loud noises, he wore ear defenders. The kids didn't clap. They used to do like marshmallow claps. They had there, because he was in their class all the time. So they had their classroom management techniques, but in terms of him accessing the lesson content, just by changing those few things, modified rules, choices of equipment, choices of activity, accessing it the way he wanted, is that gradually over time, PE became a place where he felt really happy. And we knew he was happy because he used to make his loud squealy noises that with his ear defenders on, we knew he was happy because he accessed it, because he was non-communicative verbally, but was noise making, and he used to make his happy noises, and the other children were happy to work with him because they had choice too. So it wasn't, you know, stand 3 meters apart and pass the size 5 netball, which he wouldn't have been able to access. But because of that change in the nature of choice, delivery, equipment, then other children felt that they were able to work with him in a way that they hadn't done before. So that sense of belonging was developed. So just those tiny changes were able to change for him as an ASD learner, change for him how he accessed the lesson.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's like getting the teamwork there as well for everybody as well.
It is, and offering that choice and development is that he then wasn't on the outside, as he used to actually either not come to the lesson or run around the outside of the hall, getting quite distressed some of the time, going in and out of the double doors, and then eventually maybe not accessing PE. He then, everybody, the other children, by the time he was in year 5 and 6, happier to work with him because the choice was there. They were doing their challenges their way, or even when they were working in pairs, just by offering that choice and that modification of the standard way of doing things meant that they felt more comfortable socially in belonging with him as well. So it worked really nicely. In terms of Carly, in terms of wheelchair user, I couldn't find the video, and we couldn't find it before today, but I saw a brilliant video once. It was a Sainsbury's School Games video of an athletics lesson in a secondary school. Remember I told you this, a hurdles lesson. So all the children were practicing their hurdles, and there was a wheelchair user, a young lad in a wheelchair, who came out and was accessing the lesson with all his peers, except obviously he wasn't going over the hurdles, but they'd set cones up at the same place as the other children had their hurdles. And as he approached, he'd have a start time, the same on the stopwatch. And as he approached the cone, he would lift the leg, his leading leg. They still talked about leading leg and trail leg. He'd lift his leading leg. He'd go through at each cone, lift his leading leg. He'd still sprint for the finish. He still had his time. And it was a brilliant example to me about access and about choice, and that had been his choice. This is how I'd like to access this lesson. I want to come and be with my peers. I want to still be timed. I want to race, but it's my time. It doesn't matter that my time doesn't compare to theirs. And actually it was a brilliant example of asking that particular secondary school child who could, how do you want to do this lesson with us? We're doing hurdles. How do you think you want to do hurdles? And it was a brilliant video of him still doing his form of hurdles whilst the lesson was going on, still being timed, still setting a personal best. So it was a nice one to look at in terms of wheelchair users.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. And I will be sure to kind of send through any of those examples as well as the resources at the end of the training as well. So hopefully it's just something to kind of go on and look into in a bit more detail. But thank you, Sophia, for sharing that example, because it just made sense to do one that was relevant for you guys as opposed to one that maybe we'd kind of come up with. But yeah, that's great. For the sake of time, we'll kind of keep going with the presentation. But if anybody has particular scenarios, particular children that they would like support with, please use the contact details that we'll share with you at the end of the presentation, and we'll offer any support that we can. But yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay, so within the school games dashboard on the school games website, there's an inclusive health check. So that's a self-review tool. So what if you've got access to that website, and as I said, we can everyone can get access to it because there's a login with an email and a password. You're able to work through this check and be honest. There's no right or wrong answer, no judgment. So you answer some questions yes and some questions no. And what it does, it throws up some ideas, some potential solutions for you. So that might be a useful thing for some of you to do if you haven't done that already. Okay, I think the other thing that's useful to do is know your audience, know your children, know who's around them, and perhaps do that with the Senko. And I'm sure that sort of thing happens in schools anyway with various meetings and such like. But just raising that awareness, so you know who who the children are and what their needs will be, and then that will help you with your planning, okay, for your lessons.
Brilliant, absolutely, Jason. In terms of today, some takeaways from today, I've just been jotting some things down while we've been talking over the course of it, and I'm just putting them in the chat now. I know you guys will have taken notes, but I'm just going to put them in the chat now so you can pop them down. But some things that I've written down are remembering to use the STEP principle to change the space, task, equipment and people in order to make it right for every learner, and to specifically include those learners that might concern us. Modify the rules if and where necessary, and from my opinion, all the time. Never let children get caught up with this is the only way to do things. Change rules as often as you possibly can. Make them your school rules. Say, no, this is the way we do things at Ashlands, or this is the way we do things at Manor Court. These are the Manor Court rules for dodgeball. They're not the international rules, or whatever it might be. Yes, Jason.
Tanya, just to add in there, because I think it's probably appropriate for rules. Something what we used before is a superheroes.
Yeah, love this.
So giving the kids a superpower. So, for example, they can't be tackled. So you might give those superpowers to the children. The children themselves might decide who to give superpowers to. So that just ties. I just thought I'd add that in because it ties in nice with the task.
I love that idea that different children in the class get different superpowers, not just the child we're thinking inclusively about, but if we're thinking every child, a whole team could have a superpower and they get it for a certain number of minutes and see what they do with it. Or an individual child who we know needs it can go in any of the space, but other children can only go in a set space, in a smaller area of space. So having those superpowers, I've added it to my list there, Jason. I think that's great. And if you get that as a regular thing in your lessons, then people won't complain. We're always going to get a little bit of resistance sometimes from some children about inclusive principles, because they'll say, this isn't how we normally do it, or this isn't how you play this game. But introducing something like a superpower on a regular basis that every child gets the opportunity to get sometimes in the lesson is a great way of offering that choice, offering that difference, that modification to the way things normally happen. So I've added in here, guys, as well, to our chat. So I've just use the STEP principle, modify the rules, use the superpower, offer choice. Ask the learners, if you are ever in doubt, ask the learners, how do you want to be involved? How do you think you'd like to be in this lesson? What would you like to do in this lesson? I know as teachers, that's hard for us sometimes to shift that responsibility to the learner. We think we have to have all the answers, but actually it's a great one when we feel worried about a particular learner. If they can articulate, it's great to ask them what they would like to do. Praise the behaviours, not outcomes. So it's not about winning, or it's not about goals, or it's not about scoring, it's not about being the best. Praise those behaviours we want to see: belonging, accessibility, teamwork, focus. Use the open or parallel activities that Carly talked about. I think they were great. And think about every child. When you think inclusively, don't think about individual learners, think about every child. So hopefully those guys, those were our key messages, our golden threads from today for you guys to take away. And I know Carly's got a brilliant, some brilliant kind of useful resource links for you as well. So we're hoping that we have covered some of that. We talked about what the term inclusivity means. Hopefully we've challenged you a little bit in terms of your thinking, and thinking about, go away from today and think about the intent of your curriculum. Is it inclusive for everybody? Does it put every child at the heart of the learning? We've looked at a few ideas, and Jason's signposted you to some really nice school games resources and resource cards that we can turn into great PE lessons or use for competitions if we want. And I'm hoping that with the slide that Carly's got for you next, you will have some resources to support you moving forward. I'm going to ask at this point, Carly, if it's all right, has anybody got any questions? I'm sure you might go away from today and think, that you've got questions for us, we're always available to answer those. But has anyone got any burning questions right now, either in the chat or that they want to unmute? Anything that's come up that you want to ask about, or a particular learner? No, thank you. I see Gemma shaking her head. No, great. Okay. So Carly's got some wonderful resources for you.
Yeah, so as promised, guys, we wanted to kind of send you away with some opportunities to kind of look into some of our resources in a little bit more detail. So after the presentation, after the webinar, I'll follow up with an email and I'll send you all of the links that you can see on the screen right now. So it includes the Top Sports Ability resource, which again, some of you may be familiar with. All of these are free resources. It's just on your first time of accessing the Top Sports Ability website, you'll need an inclusion code, which you can see just on the screen there. For Somerset, it's YST inclusion 38. But I'll put that explanation on the page as well. And we have a list of resources that we think would just be really useful for practical examples of inclusion in school sport and PE. One thing I noticed that's not on here that we have spoken about is the All About Autism, All About Me resource, which I'll also send out. So I've made a note on that. And as mentioned, it's a really useful resource that not only talks about the autistic spectrum and more knowledge and understanding around that, but also includes sensory processing and social communication, social interaction and communication. So it's a really useful resource that you can take some practical examples away from as well. So we'll share all of that with you.
Carly, can I just add on the Your School Games there? So everybody's able to sign up on the Your School Games website. It's free. It's free. You can have more than one. You can have more than one person on the school account as well. So Gemma, I know at St. Louis that Jen Davis has already, she's already registered, but that means that you can also sign up with your email and your password. And once you're in on that website, there's loads and loads of free resources. Click on the resources tab and it gives you a sport option or a play option. Sport is some of the things we've seen today, like the cricket and the canoeing. So there's video clips and there's downloadable lesson plans. Play is more of like a lunchtime playground sort of games. Yeah, just go and have a look around those because everyone here today can sign up and access those. Thank you, Carly.
Thanks, Jason. And then, yeah, just lastly, we just wanted to share with you our contact details because sometimes, you know, after the webinar, a little bit later down the line, you'll have those kind of questions and queries that you may not think of today. And we just want to make sure that you've got our contact details so we can support you at any time. So again, I'll share these as part of the email, but feel free to kind of jot those down if you want to at the current time, but we will follow up with that.
Guys, just like to say, we haven't done an evaluation form, but this is the first time that we've done this training. We would like to offer it to other schools. We want to know if it's useful. We want to know if we've got the content right. So please, as our first group, if you could drop Carly a line, just a quick sentence to say, I really like that bit. I would have liked more of that. That was useful. All of that feedback is good for us because we want to get it right for other PE leads, other schools, other Senkos. So if you feel like it, we'd really love you to drop Carly a line just with a little bit of feedback to say what was useful and what you'd like more of. That would be really helpful to us if it's not too onerous for you.